Welcome back to the Gentleman's Gazette. In today's video, we'll review shirts from the brand Spear & Mackay. We'll talk about their pros and cons, and who should buy them and who shouldn't. First up, let me say this video is 100% not sponsored. Spear & Mackay did not provide us with any product. We spent more than $1,600 of our own money buying these products. Over the course of 18 months, we tested them, washed them, worn them, so we can come up with our own opinions that are completely unbiased and unfiltered. So, who are Spear & Mackay? Well, actually, it's a Canadian brand. It is priced very affordably, yet it suggests a higher quality level, and many people often probably compare it to Suit Supply or Pini Parma. While they now offer a wider range of casual and also more formal clothing, they all started with shirts, and because it's still the core of their brand, that's the item we're going to focus on today. Honestly, because we really go deep, if we made a video on all the things they offer, it would probably be 2 or 3 hours long. So in this video, we share with you what type of shirts Spear & Mackay offers, what value you get when you buy a shirt from them, what you have to pay attention to if you decide to buy a shirt from them, and the caveats you have to deal with if you buy from Spear & Mackay. But before we get there, let's take a brief look at the company's history. Spear & Mackay was launched as an online brand on May 5th in 2010 by Ricky Kana in Canada. He had a bit of a journey to get there, starting with a trip to an Asian textile market in 2004, when Ricky realized that he could get an overall less expensive shirt if he bought the fabric separately than if he would just go to his tailor and have something custom made for him. In 2009, he spent 7 months in India trying to find the right fabrics and pairing it with a larger scale manufacturer. His goal was to raise ready-to-wear as well as customized shirts. Now, Spear & Mackay offers something that is called a custom shirt, and in our opinion, that is not a true custom product. But as we said before in this video, there's no clear definition that is protected of what custom means. To understand what we mean under custom compared to made-to-measure and made-to-order, for example, check out this video here. Overall, they joined a whole menswear online marketplace at an early time, just like Indochino did or iTailor, for example. A few years in 2012, Spear & Mackay added jackets and trousers and sports coats to their lineup, all of them being produced in China in order to keep the cost low, which had become some of the hallmark for the brand. Now, whether country of origin matters, and made in China or made in Germany or made in the US is truly different, check out this video here. Frankly, we have no idea what kind of standards Spear & Mackay has in their factories, so we can't speak to that. As Spear & Mackay has grown, the base of the company continues to be in Mississauga, Canada. And while I used to have a flagship store, they seem to have closed that down and now fully focus on the online sales model. Now the big question, what makes a Spear & Mackay shirt a Spear & Mackay shirt? In my mind, there are 3 big things. Number 1 is their price. Personally, I think it's their biggest attractor, and their regular retail price points of dress shirts ranges from $39 to $88. Now that's of course just for their ready-to-wear shirts. Their custom shirts are priced higher, and I'll talk about them later. Now while they actually offer quite a few shirts at a $39 price point, the majority of shirts is between $45 and $55. When Spear & Mackay shirts are on sale, you can sometimes get them for $19, which is extremely inexpensive in North America. On top of that, shipping to Canada or the US is free with orders over $100 or more. Now, if you're on their email list, they regularly have flash sales and typically up to 20% off. Sometimes it also applies to their sale items, so you can get even bigger deals. So how can they afford to sell shirts that inexpensively? Well, on a sale price, they probably don't make much money. They simply have slow sellers that they want to get out of storage because the storage also has a cost to them. Otherwise, it's a typical direct-to-consumer model, cutting out the middleman, therefore passing on price savings directly to you. More specifically, they say that other brands that cost the same use fabrics that are less expensive, and brands that use fabrics that are as expensive as theirs would cost you more. Of course, they never show or mention actual brands, so in my mind, it's all smoke and mirrors. Why? Well, it doesn't really tell me specifically what's going on or who they're benchmarking against and if what they claim is actually true. As is the case with many companies who utilize these type of diagrams, Spear McKay also highlights how quality is a cornerstone of their brand. Interestingly, they're quite vague when it comes to explaining what exactly it is that they mean when they say that. In a nutshell though, Spear McKay offers relatively affordable shirts and other goods for men interested in classic style. Now, the second reason why someone would be interested in the Spear McKay shirts, in my opinion, is the fact that they have quite a range of style options. For example, they offer regular dress shirts, they offer denim shirts, casual shirts, sports shirts, polo shirts, Oxford cloth button-down shirts, and so forth. More importantly, Spear McKay has done some homework. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at their Oxford cloth button-down shirts, for example. They feature a rolled button-down collar with a nice S-curve, which is something that you don't usually find from lower-priced shirt manufacturers. Why is it such a big deal? Well, it allows for the collar to elegantly roll along the gorge of the lapel, and it looks particularly nice when not worn with a tie, but it can also be worn with a tie. It frames the tie nicely, and it always gives you a casual, somewhat preppy look that is desired by some. To learn more about the type of look, check out our review of the talented Mr. Ripley here. The Spear McKay OCBD shirt also has a 4-piece split yoke. There are no pleats in the back. And if you take a look at the armhole seam, you can see triple stitching for just a reinforced sleeve attachment. Otherwise, you see single needle stitching with about 19 to 20 stitches per inch or 2.5 centimeters. And then you have a pocket. If there's a pattern, typically it's matched on the sleeve, on the shoulder, on the yoke, and on the pocket, which is something that you rarely see in this kind of price category. It also has a side seam gusset, and so you can tell they looked into what classic enthusiasts value and put it all into their shirt. For their made-to-measure shirts, which is the custom program, they offer a variety of 21 shirt collars. They also have 10 cuffs and 10 shirt front styles. You can also choose between 4 pleat options or no pleat and no pocket or 17 different pocket styles. Last but not least, they allow you to define the edge stitching on your collar. You can have it all the way at the edge. You can have it a 1/4 inch in or 1/8 of an inch in. On the ready-to-wear side, probably their most popular collar is the button-down collar, followed by their spread or full spread collar. All collars with collar stays have removable ones, and they come by default with plastic stays. Again, that's very normal in this price range, and you only find higher materials such as metal from more expensive brands. Now, sadly, if you're in the market for more unusual collars, such as a club collar, for example, with rounded points, or a tab collar, or a collar for collar bars, Spear McKay cannot give that to you, even though they have a custom program that in theory should offer you that. Now, Spear McKay has 3 different ready-to-wear shirt lines. On their higher end is the purple label, and then a black and white label on the lower end. Their purple label is the highest range with Australian mother of pearl buttons. The black label is their middle range, and it features shell buttons. They're not as nice as the Australian mother of pearl, but they're still shell. And their white label have distinctly different buttons. That's their lowest tier, it seems. And their buttons, when you burn them, look different, and they burn by themselves compared to the buttons that are shell. When you smell it, it smells a bit like burnt plastic. It could be like a composite button or something. I'm not entirely sure. We'd have to get it lab tested to really figure that out. What's important for you to know is purple is the highest, black second, white the third tier. If you take a closer look, sadly you can see that none of the buttons in Spearmint K have shanks. And because of that, particularly on thicker fabric, once the shirt is buttoned or the button is buttoned, you see little wavy ripples around the button, which is a hallmark that there's not enough space between the fabric and the button itself for this extra fabric layer. As you know, the devil's in the detail, and Spearmint K seems to have an 80-20 approach where they try to get 80% of the most important things right while neglecting the small 20% details in order to hit that desired price point. Spearmint K also offers polo shirts, and so we tested those as well. Polo shirts come in two different color options. One is kind of a medium spread collar. The other one is their button-down collar. They have short sleeve options in the largest range of colors, then long sleeve polos in a more limited range of colors, and then they also have a few dress shirt style shirts that are cut like a dress shirt with a button-down collar, but are made with a polo shirt mesh material. All of their polo shirts feature a shirt-style collar, which is not that typical kind of elastic curled collar that is often very flimsy and curls in an unsightly manner. That being said, their interlinings on the polo collars are rather soft, which is comfortable and nice, but I found that over the course of the day, their medium spread collar curls in a not so nice way, whereas the button-down collar always looks good throughout the day, so I prefer the button-down collar on the polo shirts. Now, the third reason a Spearmint K shirt is attractive is likely the variety in sizing. At least that was something that attracted me to them in the first place. First off, they offer extra slim, slim, and contemporary fits. Contemporary being the widest one, extra slim the slimmest. If you take a look at their fit guide, for example, it's a drop by 2.5 inches from contemporary to slim in the chest, and then a drop of 1 inch from slim to extra slim. These drops are consistent throughout their neck size range. As you can see, there's overall no classic cut or full cut of a shirt, and this overall slim trend is reflected also in the sleeves of their shirts, even in their widest contemporary fit. Overall, it's just a more slim-fitting shirt. And by slim, I mean even slim upper sleeves and lower sleeves. Now I tried their 15.5 collar and their 16, and I think the 16 fits me a bit better, but bear in mind that the actual 15.5 inch collar measures 16 1/8 of an inch. Yes, that's a difference of 5/8 of an inch, or about 1.5 centimeters, which is quite a bit. The cool thing about Spearmint K is that you can choose between these three fits. Let's say I get a contemporary in 15.5. I can choose a sleeve length of 33, 34, 35, or 36, because they know, because of the bell curve, most men that have a 15.5 neck size will have one of those sleeve lengths. Now, while that works for most men, it doesn't work for all. My father-in-law Tom, for example, he has more of a size 16 neck, but very short arms at 32, so he wouldn't find a shirt that fits him really well off the rack. Also, he's not really into slim-fitting shirts, so his only option would be the custom option, which is really a made-to-measure option from Spearmint K. When looking at Spearmint K's shirt size guide on the website, it appears that all shirts with the same sizing, let's say contemporary 16-36, fit the same way. However, in our experience, that is not the case. For example, my first order was a pair of linen shirts in 16-36. One was a contemporary fit, the other one was a slim fit. I liked the way they felt, I liked the way they were cut in the body, I liked the room in the sleeves, I liked the material. So next time I ordered a 16-36 in a cotton, and it fit a lot tighter in the body as well as the sleeves. It was really remarkable. So let's say you buy something that's on sale, that's not returnable, and you assume, well, I have a shirt already in my size, and I'm getting that same size that should fit the same. Well, when you get it, it may not fit you at all, and of course you can't return it anymore because it was a sale item. As I mentioned, we spent over $1,600 on Spearmint K shirts, and the ones that are made out of linen seem to fit more loosely than the ones that are made out of cotton. Also, shirts that are made out of thicker fabrics have a tighter fit than the ones made out of a thinner fabric. For their super casual shirts or their polo shirts, they have sizes of like small, medium, large, etc. And their large polo shirt fits about, I would say, like a 1635 or 1636 in contemporary. Apart from that, there are also other variations. For example, a polo shirt may have quite a wide wrist versus a shirt made of the same material with a button-down front all the way has slimmer wrists. I think it's because these items are made in different factories, or maybe they have different standards. Honestly, I don't know. All I can tell is that getting the right size is always a bit of a gamble. So if you're a bit heavier than me, I think Spear & Mackay is probably not something for you, because even for me, the cotton shirts are already almost too tight and borderline. I wouldn't want anyone in there that is bigger than me. Next up, let's talk about one of the biggest aspects of a shirt, which is the fabric that is used. On their website, under their Why Choose the Spear & Mackay section, they claim that all of their shirts are made out of 100% Egyptian cotton from the world's best mills. Again, it sounds impressive, but it's not specific. Now, if you dig a little deeper on a different page, they mention that they work with mills from Thomas Mason, Albini, Tessitura Monti, and Schöcktasch. All of those are good, well-known and respected brands for shirting fabric, but if you take a closer look, they even misspelled Schöcktasch. Now, even though they're respected brands, they offer a range of different fabrics, some with a focus on price and others with a focus on quality. Some of them are made in China or Asia, others are made in Europe. Now, in case of Spear & Mackay, they don't tell us what range they actually use for their shirt fabrics. Unless you go with their more expensive custom options, then they'll tell you a little bit more about what that specific fabric is. On the ready-to-wear front, you don't have that though. Instead, in more vague terms, they say that they now develop exclusive fabrics for Spear & Mackay that are not available elsewhere. Now, that can be a good thing or a bad thing. We don't know. Just because something is exclusive doesn't mean it's of higher quality. Also, saying a shirt is made out of fabric from 100% Egyptian cotton, it's not specific. Egyptian cotton, because it's grown in Egypt, implies that it has a longer staple length, and longer staple length cotton twisted in yarns is better, and you can learn more about that in our cotton and shirting fabric guide here. But at the end of the day, Spear & Mackay doesn't tell us anything about staple length. Now we just talked about what they say about their fabrics and themselves. In my experience, looking at the different fabrics of the shirts that were shipped to me, I would say that they seem fine, but very basic. None of the fabrics to me seemed luxurious or premium in any way. Overall, I would say all of their fabrics were on the thinner, flimsier side. Now don't get me wrong, you can get a medium weight Oxford cloth button down or twill. But if I look at my OCBD shirt from Mercer & Sons, the Oxford cloth is a lot thicker than the cloth that is advertised as heavy from Spear & Mackay. Same is true with the twill. I have much heavier twill shirts than the ones advertised as heavy from Spear & Mackay. So overall, I would say Spear & Mackay offers lightweight to medium weight fabrics. In terms of the feel, they're somewhat coarse, they're not super soft, even though the linen shirts I found were nice and soft and really great for a shirting material. Honestly though, at the price point of Spear & Mackay, I think it's a good fabric. It's what I would expect. It's decent, but it's nothing special. So the fact that Spear & Mackay kind of touted their horn and advertised it as high quality, I was maybe a bit disappointed. But if I take a step back and just look at the price, I think what you get for what you pay in terms of fabric is good. Is it exceptional or very good? No. Is maybe their quality control with its top? I don't think so. I got a shirt with a clear weaving error and they didn't catch that. Now, it can happen. Cotton is a natural material. Weaving errors happen and that's okay. But again, there's nothing that shows me that Spear & Mackay does anything special in terms of fabric quality. Now, their polo shirt material, on the other hand, I think is above average. It has a nice medium to heavier weight. It's very soft. It's nice and flexible, but typically all knitted mesh materials are. I've washed them about 24 times. So far, they're holding up well. Typically, in my experience, softer fabric in cotton is often made of a shorter staple length, so it feels softer and has this kind of flannelly soft nap. And because of that, it peels faster and wears out faster. But so far, I cannot see anything that's wearing out faster on the Spear & Mackay polo shirts. All I can tell, they're softer than maybe polo shirts from Ralph Lauren or other brands that we've tested in our polo shirt guide. At the end of the day, only time will tell how long they hold up. Another important aspect of a shirt is its construction. And overall, I would say Spear & Mackay is pretty decent. The stitch density on the shirts that I have here was between 19 and 20 stitches per inch, which is 2.5 centimeters. The stitching overall was neat and straight. They had the reinforced gusset, the patterns lined up and matched for the most part. So probably above average, I would say, even though just slightly so. Now, one thing that bugs me about the construction of Spear & Mackay shirts is their collars. More specifically, all the collars that are not button-down collars. All of their regular shirt collars or spread collars are fused, and that's okay and normal, most of them are. One of the hallmarks I've seen over and over again from cheaper or lower-end shirts is that the tips over time curl. When you get it freshly out of the box and ironed, it looks neat. But as you wear it over the course of the day, the tip kind of curls inward and it just looks not very advantageous. All of my Spear & Mackay shirts without a button-down collar suffered from this exact curly issue. So that leads me to believe it's not just an isolated incident or occurrence, it is more a widespread problem. An issue I had with one of the collars was that the entire collar wing curled in one direction on the one side and the other on the other side. So it looks very asymmetrical and disadvantageous right from the get-go. That being said, I found all the button-down collars to be unfused and soft, curling nicely, and I didn't have any issues with tip curling, which makes sense because they're buttoned right there, so they're not prone to doing that kind of stuff. So in our opinion, if you want to buy a Spear & Mackay shirt, stick with their button-down collars and you'll be a lot happier. Now what about their custom shirts? As I briefly alluded to before, custom is not a protected term and it means different things to different people. In our opinion, custom means that an individual pattern is created for you and the sky's the limit and you can have whatever collar shape or feature that you want. Now, Spear & Mackay obviously defines custom differently. What they have is you can either go with a made-to-order program where you just choose your collar size, your sleeve length, and your fit between slim, extra slim, and contemporary. Then you can choose the fabric and all the features from a pre-selected range that they offer to you. You can alternatively also measure a shirt and provide those measurements, or you can measure from your body. They also allow you to add things like your posture and adjust for it, or your shoulder slope, but it's all symmetrical. Like in my case, my right shoulder is much lower than my left, so it's not really a custom shirt. Also, my sleeve length is different on the right and on the left. Again, can't accommodate for that there. But then again, their prices range from $59 for their made-to-measure shirt all the way to $168. Starting at about the $89 level, they'll actually share with you what kind of branded fabric it is. Below that, they don't really share with you the brand of fabric that you get with a shirt. I would say overall, the selection of the fabric is somewhat limited. They have all the basics: twill, Oxford cloth, and typical colors: white, light blue, pinkish, and so forth. They have a few special cloths and wool, maybe in linen, also a few special colors. But if you have an established wardrobe, but you maybe want something in a solid pale yellow or in a solid yellow altogether, you can't find that there. Things like orange or green, much more limited. Maybe they have one or two options, that's it. So overall, for their custom program, I wouldn't say it's the brand's strong suit, but their ready to wear on the other hand definitely is, because it has broad sizing options, a relatively wide selections of patterns and fabrics at an extremely competitive price point. Now, what's not to like about Spear & Mackay, you may wonder? And apart from the things I outlined before that have to do with the shirt or the collar or the sizing itself, there is a caveat. Over the course of the 18 months I've dealt with Spear & Mackay, I've really come to dislike their customer service. Why? Well, first of all, it starts with their response times. I've had periods where I had to wait for over a week to get a reply from them, so that leads me to believe that they have some internal system issues where they can't ensure that every email is replied to in a timely manner. The second reason I don't like their customer service is that, to me, it seems they're not driven to actually solve your problem or accommodate your request. Now, every time between every email, you have to wait for a day, so it becomes this long, drawn-out process to just solve a simple issue. I placed 2 different orders, and once I got them, a few days later, within their return period, they had lowered their prices by 20%. So I reached out to them and said, hey, can I have a price adjustment? First they were like, no, and then we agreed on store credit. But then when they calculated the store credit, it wasn't the actual 20%. They just couldn't get it right. It was just a long, drawn-out ordeal. And at that point, I was like, it's so difficult to deal with them, and they make me as the customer work. They are not understanding of my situation, that this is just not worth my time. I understand that at the end of the day, if you buy a cheaper product, you can't expect the world. And cheaper product typically means a worse customer service experience. If that's something that's okay with you, great. I've decided that personally I will no longer buy anything from Spear McKay, but that's just me. You have to decide how you value your time and what's important to you. And maybe if you just have $20 for a shirt, then yes, by all means, go buy it from Spear McKay. You will likely not be disappointed. Apart from the customer service, what's not to like about Spear McKay? Well, on the one hand, their packaging is really lackluster. It's a simple plastic bag with a tag on it. But of course, at this price point, you can't expect beautiful gift packaging. Another negative thing about Spear McKay is that they have a relatively high turnover of colors and patterns. Let's say they had a yellow polo shirt. Once it's sold out, it's not going to come back. Or if you have a striped shirt that you liked in a bold stripe, well, next season it's gone. So they're very seasonal, and you don't get this consistent wide offering that you may used to from other brands. So in conclusion, I would say that Spear McKay shirts, in my mind, are first and foremost a value, price-driven shirt that provides you quite a bit of bang for your buck. If, and there are 2 ifs, you like a slimmer fit and slimmer arms. If you don't like that, Spear McKay is likely not for you. The other if is if you stick with button-down collars, because they're really nice. They have that nice S-curve shape, they don't have the little tip curls, and overall turn out nicely. Moreover, Spear McKay shirts are an even better value if you buy them on sale, especially if you buy enough that you get over the $100 free shipping threshold. Just keep in mind that sizing of the same size between shirts may not always be consistent, and that dealing with returns and the customer service may be a pain in the neck. Out of all the shirts I bought from them, I think the button-down collar shirts in linen and the popover shirt and the polo shirts are my favorite. All right, that's it. I'd be curious to learn, what is your experience with Spear McKay, whether it's in their customer service, their sizing, or their shirts, or maybe other products in the lineup. And in today's video, I'm wearing a Spear McKay polo shirt in a nice olive green. I think it complements my skin tone. I'm pairing it with a pair of khakis, which are custom made for me, not by Spear McKay. They're flat front, which is unusual for me, because usually I go with pleats because I have bigger thighs. I'm pairing it with a belt from Fort Belvedere. It's part of our exchangeable belt system, and you can learn more about that here. It has the same dark brown color as my woven leather Carmina Chelsea boots. My socks are brown socks with green and white clocks that pick up the color of my polo shirt, as well as my pinky ring, which is a green tourmaline in a solid gold setting that matches the gold color of my belt buckle.